Hello, and welcome to the Food for Thought podcast. I'm your host, Erin Hallstrom. With me on the podcast today is Matt Cohen, founder of Kidfresh. Launched in 2007, Kidfresh takes children's favorite foods like spaghetti and meatballs, mac and cheese, and chicken nuggets, and adds a nutritious twist to them. But that's not all. Not only are they more nutritious, they're also more convenient, a huge plus for busy parents. Join Matt and I as we talk about the reason Kidfresh was launched, why creating better-for-you foods for children has been a struggle, and how he managed to find the perfect formula for good-tasting and good-for-you frozen food products. And we cap things off talking about what trends Matt is seeing in both the children's nutrition sector as well as in frozen foods. Enjoy the episode. Matt, I am so excited. Welcome to the Food for Thought podcast. I really want to dig in, roll up my sleeves, and let's get started by talking a little bit about you. Tell me about you, your background, and most importantly, about Kidfresh.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. Very excited to be on the show. My name is Matt Cohen. I'm the co-founder of Kidfresh, and Kidfresh has become the number one better-for-you frozen foods for kids in the U.S. Kidfresh started in 2007, first as a retail store in Manhattan, and evolved into a frozen food brand starting in 2010. Quick note about myself, I was born and raised in France, so bonjour everyone who's listening to the show. I'm a French and American. I've been in the U.S. for over 26 years now, and Kidfresh has been my entrepreneurial life for the past, I would say, almost 15 years now.
I think you might be the first guest we've had that has introduced some international flair and some internationality to some language, something other than English, into an episode. So only took us a couple of seasons, but here we are. I expect big things for our third season now. So
Voila.
Tell me, where did the idea for Kidfresh come from?
It really came from, me being blessed with a son and later with a daughter, so really becoming a parent. And experiencing, what the kids' food market was in the U.S. as a parent. Particularly, one event really sort of triggered the whole chain of events that led to the creation of Kidfresh. It was one of these crazy mornings when the kids are running around and don't want to get dressed and, making fun of you and just driving you nuts, right? And it's like, 7:23 a.m. and we're about to leave and I'm about to take them to school. And then, my son looks at me and say, "Hey, Dad, you forgot the lunchbox." And I'm like, damn, I forgot the damn lunchbox. And I was like, so now I need to, at 7:23, in the middle of this crazy situation, I have to prepare a lunchbox with, sandwich and a side and a drink and this and that. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So, lo and behold, obviously the kids got fed and had their food for lunch. But then, as my partner and I were talking about, ideas for, launching a business, I came to that sort of brainstorming session that morning. I'm like, here's what happened to me this morning. This is nuts. You can have your coffee at Starbucks. You can have your sandwiches everywhere you want ready to go. You have all your prepared food for adults ready to go, from Whole Foods to all the, the delis and stores around the country. But for kids, you need to go in the trenches and, prepare it yourself. It doesn't make any sense. Let's explore that opportunity. And that's really how it started.
You raise a really good point there about all of the things that you can get quickly. So I'm curious, from your point of view, why did it seem like the kids' nutrition space was lacking in good-for-you foods?
I think it's I see two reasons. One, the demand for better-for-you foods in general in the U.S. was really emerging and has really emerged, let's say, in the past 20, 25 years. Before that, there was less of a demand in general. I'm not talking about kids' food here. I'm talking about, natural and organic in general, right? So in general, again, people were less concerned about that. And as it relates to kids' food in particular, the product offered to consumers were generally junk food because for kids, you just put sugar in a box and you put a cartoon character on the box and you're going to sell it. So really, why bother doing quality food when, the industry can just sell, its processed food for kids with very basic ingredients, certainly many artificial ingredients, sugar, and cartoon characters. So as the adult population evolved towards better-for-you foods and on natural and organic foods, then as they became adults and parents, they started to want the same thing for their own kids. And that's really when we started Kidfresh, pretty much, I think, at that time, about 15 years ago or so.
What would you say is the most important thing to parents these days when it comes to their children's nutrition?
So I think the most important thing for all parents is that the children will eat the food. That's where it starts. Nutrition or no-nutrition, kids need to eat their food. And so, that's the daily struggle for parents to have their children, eat their meal. That being addressed, then the second aspect is nutrition, right? Meaning I want my children to eat food, but I want them to eat good food. And that's where the art and the science come into play, because children will not eat something that is, better for them, but that doesn't taste good for them. As parents, as adults, you would eat, something that is not necessarily great, like, I don't know, I'm thinking about like a protein bar, for instance, right? You're going to eat that. It's not necessarily great in terms of taste and texture, but it's going to do the job from a nutrition standpoint, and so you're willing to do it. Kids, they don't think that way. So for parents, question number one is, I want my children to finish their meal, to eat their food. And number two, I want this food to be natural, organic, and nutritious, balanced, with less sodium, less fat, no sugar, more protein, and the right sort of calorie count. So these are the two priorities I think parents have as it relates to food. The third one that I would add would be convenience, in the sense that, we're all living, crazy lives. I was referring to the lunchbox episode earlier, but the same happens at the dinner table. We need some form of convenience and help so that there's a solution available for parents.
It would seem that you have had a lot of exposure to trends in the kids' nutrition and food space because of Kidfresh. What trends have captured your attention most? Really,
the move towards better for you, natural and organic, nutritious food for kids. I mean, this trend, again, started about 15 years ago or so, and it's been steady, and there's no turning back. Once you have experienced solutions that are natural and organic and healthy for kids, and the kids will eat them, you're not going to go back to junk food, right? That's a fundamental trend that is having rippling effects not only in supermarkets and CPG companies, but also in what restaurants offer in their kids' menu, or what you find in school cafeterias, for instance, with more vegetables, with more natural and organic proteins, and so on and so forth. That's a major trend which is continuing, is accelerating as new generations of parents come to the market and are looking for these types of products.
So being in both the children's nutrition space and the frozen food categories, I'm curious what trends you've noticed in the frozen food space.
So, again, in that context of, better for you, right? What you see in frozen these days is completely different than what you could find, 10, 15 years ago. I mean, you're looking at products now that are, in general, not talking about kids' food, but in general, that are much more elaborate, dishes that are much more sophisticated, with, again, ingredient quality that has gone, up and up and up, with even some premium frozen offerings that you didn't have, 10, 15 years ago. And again, maybe that's part of also of my background, having, been raised in France. In France, frozen food never had that stigma of process and junk. You could find great products, high-quality products in the frozen food aisle in France. And so that's why, in a way, when we launched Kidfresh in frozen, we were not concerned about frozen in the U.S. We were confident that consumers would start seeing the benefits and the value and the quality of frozen food in the U.S., and it was just a matter of time. So that's been really a wonderful thing to see. And again, when you look at frozen food offerings today, from breakfast items to entrees, sides, vegetables, fruits, ice creams, the quality today is incredibly superior as what it was 10, 15 years ago.
This next one is a two-part question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the pandemic impacted children and their food consumption. And then the follow-up to that is, how have shortages and supply chain issues impacted things?
Sure. So I think what we've seen at Kidfresh is a growth and an acceleration of our velocities, if you will, our units sold, per store per week, because, obviously parents and families spend much more time at home. So the need for better-for-you solutions that kids would love, was even more important during the pandemic. So much more at-home consumption, and in that respect, more frozen, high-quality frozen food consumption in general, and for kids as well. What we've seen, though, is a trend towards larger pack sizes. So we have, for instance, a chicken nugget that comes into a 7-ounce box, or a 14-ounce bag, right? And what we saw is that consumers, they're doing less trips, less purchases, but more quantities per purchase. And so our business has shifted from our individual sort of 7-8 ounce boxes towards value family bags of product, 14, 16 ounce of products, which makes sense because people would go less often to the stores, or when they would order online, but less often that they would go to the stores. So they were looking for that more quantity per purchase aspect, and we've seen that with over 41% in growth in our family-size business this year.
What has the parent response been to the Kidfresh products?
It's loyalty, repeat purchase. When parents try Kidfresh, 8 out of 10 buy it again, and as they do, they increase the quantity they buy purchase after purchase. And that's for us, an amazing, an amazing performance because, it's very hard to build loyalty, right, for brands. And for us, quite frankly, it's just a matter of consumers trying the product, and once they do, they're hooked. It's as simple as that.
All right, last question for you. Where can people find your products? And perhaps most important question of all, what has been your kids' favorite products that Kidfresh produces?
So my kids are the guinea pig, and they try everything. So I would say, some of the products they've loved are the, mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. The chicken meatballs also are just phenomenal. And then they've had the chance to taste some of our new items that are coming to market the next year with a pasta with a pizza sauce. It's just amazing. And also our beef meatballs that are probably the best tasting in the market, even for adults. And where can people find our product? In most retailers nationwide, we're in about 11,000 stores. So you go to your grocery store in the frozen food aisle, you will find us very likely there. From Walmart to Whole Foods, H-E-B, Publix, Stop and Shop, pretty much everywhere nationwide. Target also. And then they can also find us online at the retailer's website. So they can go to Target.com or Amazon or, Walmart.com, so on and so forth, and they can order the product there.
Well, now that we are all sufficiently hungry, I wanted to say, Matt, thank you so much for being on this episode of the Food for Thought podcast with me.
For everyone listening to the Food for Thought podcast today, thank you for tuning in. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and just about everywhere you can listen to a podcast. Be sure to tune in next time as we talk more about the stories behind the headlines of the food and beverage industry. Take care. Have a great day.